The great hall of the Galactic Council was silent. Hundreds of species sat in curved rows, their eyes fixed on the center where a small scout ship captain stood with trembling hands. He carried a black case, sealed with 3 locks, and his face showed fear even before he spoke. The council leader, an old being with silver skin and heavy eyes, ordered him to open it. With a slow motion the captain unlocked the case, and inside was a piece of stone, ancient and covered in symbols that glowed faintly as if alive. The chamber filled with a low whisper, not sound but something felt in the bones, a vibration that made even the strongest warriors shift uncomfortably. The council's linguists leaned forward, scanning the markings. One elder, whose memory stretched across centuries, raised his voice softly. "This script, it is older than our council itself," he said. His words made the chamber colder. No one spoke, waiting for the next discovery. The elder traced the symbols with shaking fingers. The marks spoke of a world hidden, erased, yet never forgotten. As the final line was translated, the elder's face turned pale. His lips formed a single word, and though his voice was low, it carried like thunder through the hall. Earth. A murmur swept across the chamber. Delegates from distant empires stiffened, their eyes wide with sudden fear. Some whispered to each other in panic, others turned away as if refusing to believe what they had heard. A voice broke the silence, harsh and loud. "Impossible! That name was destroyed. It cannot return." The elder shook his head, sweat running down his brow. "It was never destroyed. It was buried. And now, it is found." The council leader demanded clarity, his tone sharp. "What is this earth? Why do you tremble at a name?" But no one answered. Only the silence of fear replied. Then, from the shadows of the upper seats, an ancient historian rose. His voice was quiet but heavy. "I have seen fragments, scraps hidden in forbidden archives. Earth was not simply a planet. It was something more. A force. A destroyer." The room shook with outrage and denial. Some accused him of lies, others begged him to stop speaking. But the fear was already spreading like smoke, filling every corner. Delegates who had faced wars and monsters now shivered at a single word. Earth. The scout captain, still standing at the center, spoke again with a broken voice. "I did not want to bring this stone. My crew begged me to leave it buried. The whispers started the moment we touched it. They warned us not to carry it, not to speak the word carved on it. But we were ordered to bring everything we found." His voice cracked, his eyes red. "Now the whispers will never stop." The chamber grew colder, and the glowing marks on the stone seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. The elder stepped back, refusing to look at it anymore. "The galaxy forgot for a reason," he said. "Names hold power. That name is a curse." The council leader tried to calm the room, but the fear was stronger than his words. One by one, the delegates realized the truth. Earth was not just a name. It was a warning, a shadow from the past that had returned. Somewhere in the depths of memory, entire civilizations had once spoken that word in terror, and even after thousands of years, the fear remained. The historian's final words echoed through the chamber. "If the galaxy learns Earth's true name, fear will spread like fire." And as the delegates stared at the glowing stone, they understood. The fire had already begun. The council chamber remained heavy with silence after the forbidden word was spoken, but silence could not bury fear for long, and soon the demand for answers grew. The council leader ordered the ancient archives to be opened, even those sealed under highest restriction, for only in the past could they find the truth about Earth. In the deepest vaults of the council's library, beyond layers of security and guarded chambers, scribes unrolled brittle scrolls and activated rusted data crystals, long ignored and left to gather dust. What they uncovered was not a single story but broken fragments, scattered mentions of a world that was never supposed to exist. The first fragment spoke of a war fought millennia ago, when the stars burned with endless conflict, and a name was carved in blood across forgotten battlefields. That name was Earth. Another record described an empire of old, mighty, and cruel, which vanished without trace after its fleets ventured near a small blue planet. The words ended abruptly, as though cut off by force, leaving nothing but silence. The scribes trembled as they pieced together each fragment, for it became clear that these stories had been deliberately erased. Someone, or perhaps many, had worked together to wipe Earth from the galaxy's memory. But why erase a single planet? The council gathered again as the historians read aloud their findings. Delegates leaned forward, their hearts heavy with unease. The records do not agree, one historian said, but they all point to the same truth. Earth appeared when empires fell. Whenever its name is spoken, death soon follows. The words rippled through the chamber, making even the strongest warriors shiver. Some called it coincidence, others superstition, but the weight of the fragments was too strong to deny. The council leader demanded to know more, and the scribes hesitated, then revealed the darkest piece. It told of a council far older than the one now standing, a council that once ruled the stars with iron command. That council feared only one thing: Earth. They ordered the name stricken from records, its coordinates erased, its story buried. They believed by hiding the truth, the galaxy would remain safe. But secrets have a way of returning. The elder who had first spoken Earth's name now leaned forward, his voice shaking. We never erased Earth. We only blinded ourselves to it. And now that blindness has ended. The chamber erupted in noise, shouts of anger and denial, cries of panic, voices demanding answers. Some called for war immediately, to strike Earth before it could rise again. Others demanded silence, afraid that even speaking of it would bring doom upon them all. The council leader raised his staff for order, but order was gone, replaced by fear spreading faster than words could control. Meanwhile, the scribes uncovered more hints. They found half-burned scrolls written by unknown hands, warning of the end of empires and the world that consumes. They found maps with empty spaces where Earth should have been, entire star charts altered to hide its place. The truth became clear: countless civilizations had tried to bury Earth, yet every attempt only proved how much they feared it. The council leader spoke again, his voice grim. We face not a rumor, but a shadow of truth. Earth is real. Its name has power. And the galaxy trembles because we no longer control the memory. Delegates turned pale, their eyes filled with unspoken terror. Some remembered old tales told in whispers, bedtime warnings meant for children. Beware the humans, the destroyers in flesh. They had dismissed these as myths, yet here they were, staring at evidence that those myths had once been real. One young delegate, braver or perhaps more foolish than the rest, stood up and asked, "If Earth was so dangerous, why is it not already here? Why has it been silent for so long?" The historian answered with sorrow, "Perhaps they sleep. Perhaps they wait. Or perhaps they remember, even if we tried to forget." His words sank deep into every mind, creating dread that silence could not ease. Across the chamber, old warriors who had faced death in 100 battles admitted quietly that no enemy had ever filled them with such fear as a name they had never fought. And so the council realized the truth: they were not safe, not from Earth, not from the past they had tried to bury. As the session closed, a single thought echoed in every heart. If the galaxy had forgotten Earth once, perhaps it was mercy. But now that the name had returned, mercy was gone. The forgotten records had spoken, and their voice was louder than all the council's power. Fear had found its way into the stars, and it would not be silenced again. The council chamber was restless as fear spread like a living shadow, yet the leader demanded truth beyond fragments and whispers, so the guardians of knowledge were summoned. These were the Silent Order, keepers of secrets so dangerous that even council law forbade their study, and when they entered the chamber cloaked in gray robes the air itself seemed to grow colder. One among them stepped forward, a tall figure whose face was hidden beneath a mask of iron, and his voice was low but heavy with centuries of forbidden memory. "You ask what Earth truly is," he said, and the chamber fell into silence so deep that even the hum of machinery could not be heard. "Then you must hear what we have guarded in silence." He raised a small crystal, black as night, and placed it into the council's great projector. A vision filled the air above them, Not words but moving images of fire across the stars, fleets of warships larger than mountains shattering under weapons unseen. At the center of this destruction was not a vast empire, not a mighty alien force, but human ships, crude by modern design yet impossibly effective. The delegates gasped, some crying out in disbelief, others shaking their heads as if refusing to believe their own eyes. This is a record of the ancient devourers, the masked figure continued, a species that consumed whole galaxies, beings we thought unstoppable. Even our greatest ancestors could not defeat them. But they were stopped. Not by us. Not by the Council. They were stopped by Earth. The word struck like thunder, and the delegates leaned forward in shock. The vision showed human fleets moving with ruthless precision, their weapons tearing through devourer ships like paper, their strategies beyond anything the Council had ever known. "How is this possible?" one delegate shouted, his voice breaking. "Humans are primitive, their world is backward, their technology is centuries behind ours." The masked figure turned slowly, his voice colder than stone. "What you see is not technology. It is will." Humanity fought with fury, unlike anything the stars had ever seen. They did not fear death, they embraced it, and in their defiance the devourers fell. The room erupted in chaos as voices rose, some shouting that this was impossible, others whispering that it explained everything, the erased records, the forbidden name, the fear that never died. The masked figure silenced them with one sentence that froze every heart. The galaxy did not erase Earth because it was weak. The galaxy erased Earth because it was too strong. The council leader gripped his staff, his face pale. If this is true, then why has Earth not risen again? Why has it stayed silent? The Silent Order's leader paused, as if choosing his words with care. Perhaps they chose silence. Perhaps they remember what we tried to forget. Or perhaps they wait for the stars to forget their fear, so they may remind us once more. A chill moved through the chamber, and every delegate felt it in their bones. The historian from before stood again, his voice unsteady. "We are not dealing with myths. We are dealing with a species that defeated what we could not. A species whose very name was enough to drive the galaxy to erase its own history. Humanity is not asleep. Humanity is a storm waiting to wake." The words echoed like a curse, and suddenly the chamber was no longer filled with argument but dread. Even the most warlike species sat in silence, realizing that if Earth still carried the same spirit, no army could stand against it. The Silent Order withdrew, their duty fulfilled, leaving behind only fear. The council leader tried to rally courage, but his voice trembled. "We must decide quickly. Do we hide the truth again, or do we prepare for what may come?" But deep inside, everyone knew the truth was already free. The records had been revealed, the shadows exposed, and whispers of Earth would spread faster than light. Outside the chamber, rumors raced through the council's fleets and colonies. Soldiers heard the name Earth and shivered though they had never seen it. Civilians whispered in markets, merchants cancelled trade routes, and whole planets fell into unease. The galaxy, vast and ancient, was beginning to remember. And as the stars turned silently above, one thought burned in every mind. If Earth could destroy the devourers, what would it do if it rose again? The dark secret was no longer hidden, and the galaxy understood that its greatest nightmare was not an alien horror or a forgotten empire. It was humanity itself, waiting behind the name Earth, waiting for the right moment to return. The council's chamber was empty now, but its whispers had already escaped into the galaxy, moving faster than any ship, spreading like a sickness that no wall could contain. The name Earth was no longer just a secret spoken in hushed tones by the Silent Order. It was now a rumor carried by merchants, soldiers, and travelers, each adding fear to the telling until it grew into something far greater than truth. On distant trade stations, shopkeepers shut their doors early, whispering to neighbors that humans were waking again, that the old destroyers had returned. In military outposts, soldiers sat in silence, polishing their weapons not out of pride but out of dread. For even the most disciplined fighters found their hands shaking at the thought of facing a people who once destroyed the unstoppable devourers. Across colonies, leaders held secret meetings, arguing if the council was hiding something even worse, some claiming Earth had already risen and was waiting to strike, others insisting the council was lying to control them. Fear had no need of proof, fear only needed a name, and that name was enough to unmake order. Fleets cancelled their normal patrols near the Sol system, trade ships rerouted to avoid human space, and entire sectors suddenly felt like forbidden ground. Even species who had never heard of Earth before began to tremble, because when the oldest civilizations shook with terror, the younger ones followed without question. In great cities far from the Council's world, religious cults rose almost overnight, some worshipping Earth as a god of destruction, others praying that Earth would never turn its gaze upon them. Old myths reappeared in song and story, mothers warning children that if they disobeyed, the humans would come in the night. The Council tried to issue statements of calm, calling the rumors exaggerated, calling Earth a primitive world with no power, but their words rang hollow, for the memory of fire across the stars shown in the forbidden visions had already burned too deeply into the minds of those who saw them. The name Earth carried a weight logic could not undo. Among the Council's own fleets, captains whispered to their crews that they would rather fight 10 wars against known enemies than face one war against the humans. And so discipline weakened, orders were questioned, fear corroded loyalty from within. The galaxy was not preparing for war, it was unraveling under the shadow of a word. On Earth itself the people lived unaware of the spreading storm, going about their lives beneath blue skies, their scientists watching the stars with curiosity but not yet with suspicion. Yet in the observatories of Earth, a few sharp minds noticed strange patterns, signals hidden in the static of the galaxy, probes hovering at the edge of their system that did not belong to them. Whispers of fear had already reached their world, even if the meaning was not yet clear. Humanity did not know that their name had awakened terror, but the galaxy knew, and the galaxy could not stop trembling. Meanwhile within the Council, divisions deepened. Some leaders demanded a united strike to erase Earth before it could awaken again, fearing that in silence the humans were only preparing. Others warned that striking Earth would only prove the old stories true and doom them all. No one agreed, but every voice carried the same shadow of fear. And as debates dragged on, the whispers grew louder beyond their reach. Smugglers told stories of human fleets already building in the dark, pirates claimed to have seen ancient weapons drifting near Sol, whole planets rioted demanding protection against a threat they had never seen. The Council's authority weakened day by day, replaced not by rebellion but by raw panic. The fire of fear burned unchecked, and though no human had yet lifted a weapon or spoken a threat, the galaxy was already at war with itself. And somewhere in the vast silence of space, as rumors raced like fire, the name Earth became not just a memory of the past but a living terror of the present. The fear had spread, and it could not be stopped. On Earth life moved forward in its usual rhythm, children went to school, workers filled the cities, and nations argued about politics, unaware that their very name was shaking the galaxy, but in quiet corners of science humanity had begun to notice the shadows. Astronomers detected strange probes on the edge of the solar system, machines that did not belong to any human agency, silent watchers hiding beyond Neptune's orbit. At first they believed it was simple debris, but as days passed the signals grew clearer, repeating patterns and frequencies no one on Earth had ever used. A young scientist named Dr. Elena Ruiz was the first to decode fragments of those signals, and what she found made her blood run cold, for embedded in the repeating code was one word, translated into hundreds of alien dialects, yet always pointing back to the same meaning, Earth. She brought her findings to global authorities, and soon every major power on the planet knew the truth. Someone out there was speaking their name. At first governments thought it was a prank or secret human technology, but when independent observatories confirmed the same signals, denial was no longer possible. Humanity was being watched, studied, and whispered about. Military leaders called urgent meetings, debating if the probes should be destroyed, but cooler minds warned that striking too early might invite disaster. The United Earth Council, hastily formed from nations that barely trusted each other, demanded answers, but there were none to give. The question that haunted them was simple and terrible. Why would the galaxy care about Earth, a small world still struggling with its own problems? As days turned to weeks, the probes multiplied, as if the galaxy could not resist staring at the humans they had once tried to forget. People began to notice odd changes, satellites failing without explanation, deep space telescopes catching glimpses of shadows larger than any asteroid drifting near the outer system. Panic started to seep into Earth itself. News channels reported strange lights beyond the moon, conspiracy theorists shouted that aliens had returned, and ordinary people looked up at the night sky with fear instead of wonder. Yet within this fear something else was stirring, an old instinct buried deep in humanity's history, the same instinct that once allowed their ancestors to stand against beasts, empires, and even the devourers. Humanity was afraid, yes, but fear had always been fuel for their resolve. Dr. Ruiz and her team pressed deeper into the signals, and soon they uncovered more than whispers of their name. They found fragments of history, records so ancient they were nearly broken, speaking of humans as destroyers, as the end of empires, as beings that once made the stars themselves tremble. At first the scientists laughed, dismissing it as alien myth, but the more they studied, the more the fragments aligned with something dark in their past. Buried in humanity's own forgotten myths were echoes of wars never explained, memories of battles fought against enemies not of Earth. It was as though history itself had been cut, trimmed, and softened to hide the truth. As Earth's leaders argued, militaries quietly began to prepare. Old bunkers were reopened, experimental ships tested, weapons polished not for practice but for survival. For the first time in centuries humanity united under one thought. Someone out there feared them, and that fear could turn into attack. Across the galaxy the Council's panic grew worse, but they did not know what humanity was already beginning to understand, that silence was no longer possible. The eyes of the galaxy were upon them, and the humans, though still uncertain, were beginning to wake. The whispers had reached Earth, the fear of others had become their own fuel, and though they did not yet know the full truth, something deep inside their blood remembered. Humanity was stirring, and when humanity stirred, history had shown only one outcome. The galaxy feared their name, but soon it would remember their power. The Galactic Council gathered once more under the shadow of fear, their voices sharp and their nerves trembling, for the fragments of records and the whispers across the stars had grown too loud to ignore, and so they demanded the silent order reveal the final truth. In the chamber the masked keepers brought forth the ancient tablet once more, the one discovered by the scout ship, its symbols glowing faintly like embers refusing to die. For weeks linguists and historians had struggled with the last line carved into its surface, a line so complex that no single species could unlock it, until at last, with combined effort, the meaning was found. The council leader ordered the translation spoken aloud, and when the words echoed through the chamber, a silence heavier than death fell over every delegate. The inscription did not simply name Earth, it revealed what Earth had once been called in the age of the Devourers, a name not given by humans themselves but by their enemies. The end of empires. The phrase spread across the hall like fire, repeated in 100 different tongues, each translation carrying the same dreadful weight. Delegates turned pale, their eyes wide with horror, for in those 3 words lay the reason Earth had been erased from history. Humanity was not just a world, not just a species, it was a force that ended civilizations, a storm that toppled empires. Some shouted in denial, others broke into terrified whispers, but none could escape the truth. The historian who had long warned of forgotten records stood tall and spoke above the noise. This is why the name was hidden. Not because humanity was weak, but because they were the one thing the galaxy could not contain. Every empire that rose fell when it crossed Earth, and so the galaxy tried to erase them, to bury their memory, to pretend they had never existed. But names are not so easily destroyed, and now their true name has returned. Panic spread like a living wave. Delegates who had once argued for caution now screamed for immediate action, demanding Earth be destroyed before its people remembered what they were. Others begged for silence, insisting that to act against Earth would only awaken the storm faster. The council leader tried to calm them, but his own hands shook upon his staff, for he too understood the weight of what they had heard. The galaxy had spent thousands of years building peace, wealth, and order, but all of it now trembled at the thought of a species that did not fear empires, a species whose name was destruction itself. Beyond the council chamber the revelation spread through their networks, carried by spies, merchants, and soldiers until entire star systems knew the truth. Planets fell into chaos as the words, "the end of empires," were whispered in streets and homes, some seeing humanity as a curse, others as a prophecy, and still others as a coming savior to tear down the council's control. Across the stars fear no longer crept quietly, it blazed openly, setting fire to the fragile stability of the galaxy. And on Earth, where scientists had intercepted fragments of alien transmissions, Dr. Ruiz and her team finally decoded the same phrase. They read the ancient words in disbelief, their hearts pounding as they realized that the galaxy did not see them as explorers, not as children of a small world, but as the end of all things. The governments of Earth panicked, debating if they should reveal this truth to the public, but already rumors had spread, whispers of a forgotten destiny stirring among people who felt an old instinct rising in their blood. Humanity stood at the edge of revelation, the galaxy burned with fear, and for the first time in millennia the true name of Earth was spoken aloud across the stars. The end of empires. The Council understood what this meant, and so did the humans who read it, and in that shared moment of dread one reality became certain. The storm of humanity was waking, and no force in the galaxy would be able to stop it once it rose. The council chamber no longer held debate but only fear, for after the unveiling of Earth's true name the galaxy itself had changed, and now every world whispered about humanity with trembling voices, some calling for their destruction and others begging for peace before it was too late. In secret halls fleets were mobilized, armadas gathered in orbit of hidden worlds, and generals spoke of preemptive strikes against Earth, believing that if humanity was the end of empires then only swift fire could prevent the prophecy from coming true. Yet even as they prepared, doubts grew, for if legends were true no number of ships would be enough. On Earth the truth was also spreading, not through government broadcasts but through the unstoppable wave of leaked transmissions, decoded signals, and sudden revelations shared online. Ordinary people began to see fragments of alien words, phrases that called them destroyers, beings who ended empires, and though many laughed at first, the laughter soon faded when images of alien fleets near the edge of the solar system were confirmed by independent observatories. Humanity realized it was no longer alone, and worse, that it was being watched with fear and suspicion. Nations argued, some demanding surrender before an invasion could arrive, others shouting that humanity must strike first, but beneath all the panic something older was stirring. Soldiers who had never seen battle volunteered in millions, engineers began working night and day on weapons once shelved as impossible, and scientists uncovered strange data buried deep within Earth's own history, records that hinted their ancestors had built machines no one remembered, machines hidden in the far reaches of space. The whispers of destiny became iron resolve, for fear was fuel to humanity and unity was forged not in peace but in threat. Meanwhile the council split apart, unable to reach a decision. Some demanded Earth be crushed before its people fully awakened, others insisted that even mentioning their name again was dangerous, as if words alone could summon destruction. Factions formed, alliances broke, and soon entire empires within the council threatened to leave unless action was taken. The galaxy that once stood united now fractured under the shadow of Earth, and it was Earth itself that had not yet spoken a single word to them. Dr. Ruiz, still at the heart of Earth's discovery, warned her leaders that the galaxy was preparing for war, and though many doubted, the movement of alien fleets at the edge of the system confirmed her fears. She argued that humanity must prepare not as victims but as survivors, and her words carried through the halls of the United Earth Council until even the most reluctant leaders agreed. Deep bunkers were reactivated, secret shipyards long abandoned were brought back to life, and humanity began to arm itself for a storm they did not start but would not run from. In the skies above, prototypes of warships took flight, crude compared to the visions of ancient battles but burning with human resolve, and in silence the world prepared. Across the stars spies reported back to the council, speaking of Earth's growing defenses, and those reports spread panic faster than any fleet could travel. They are awakening, one message warned, and when they awaken, no empire will stand. Fear turned to desperation. Some worlds began fleeing their homes, abandoning colonies near Sol, while others prepared to betray the council itself if it meant safety. The galaxy was breaking under the weight of a name, and Earth was rising beneath it, a shadow that stretched further each day. The council leader, old and weary, stood before the assembly and spoke a truth none wished to hear. We can no longer contain this. Humanity is no longer asleep. The shadow has risen, and the end of empires walks again. His words fell heavy, and though no one wanted war, all knew it was coming, for fear had already chosen the path. Humanity was no longer just a world. It was a storm building in silence, and soon the galaxy would face the truth of its own forgotten terror. The shadow was rising, and nothing would stop it. The fleets came at last, Countless warships from dozens of species gathering at the edge of Sol, their hulls gleaming with weapons meant to erase a world, their commanders speaking in hushed tones of necessity, of survival, of striking first before the storm could awaken fully. But none of them truly believed their own courage, for every soldier, every captain, every admiral carried the same unspoken dread, that they were about to face the end of empires. In silence the alien armadas advanced, their formation tight, their weapons locked upon the blue planet that hung like a jewel in the dark. But Earth was not silent anymore. Long before the first shot was fired, strange signals pulsed from the depths of the system, awakening machines hidden in forgotten places, relics of a war humanity itself no longer remembered. From the asteroid belt shapes emerged, vast ships black as night, their surfaces absorbing light rather than reflecting it, their engines burning with energy no alien sensor could identify. The fleets halted in shock as these warships turned slowly toward them, for though they bore the crude outline of human design, their scale was monstrous, their presence suffocating. Dr. Ruiz watched from Earth's command station, her voice steady though her hands trembled, as she declared to the world what was now undeniable. Humanity had not been unprepared, they had only been sleeping, and their awakening had called forth weapons no empire could match. The aliens fired first, torrents of plasma and beams of pure energy streaking across space, enough to tear moons apart, but when the blast struck the human ships they vanished into shadows, swallowed whole as if space itself obeyed humanity's will. Then the human fleet answered. Their weapons did not roar with fire but whispered with silence, a ripple of unseen force that tore through alien hulls like paper, shattering armadas in seconds. Entire fleets broke apart before they even understood what had struck them. Panic spread as admirals screamed orders, but their formations collapsed under the storm, their courage shattered by the realization that the legends had been true. Earth was the end of empires, and now the galaxy was learning why. Across the stars the battle was watched by millions through hacked transmissions, and as alien ships burned and broke, fear turned into despair. Whole worlds cried out that their fleets were lost, colonies prayed for mercy, and rulers who once demanded war now begged for retreat. But retreat was no longer possible. Humanity's awakening had begun, and the storm was unstoppable. On Earth's surface people watched the skies, not with fear but with grim pride, as they saw for the first time that they were not small, not weak, but something far greater, something the galaxy had tried to bury yet failed to kill. The war did not last hours, it lasted minutes, and when silence finally returned, the fleets that had come to destroy Earth were gone, their wreckage drifting like ash across the system. Only a few survivors limped back into the void, carrying with them the story the galaxy would never forget, that the humans had risen, and their true name was not myth but reality. The Council received those reports with pale faces and trembling hearts, for they understood now that their fear had not been large enough, that erasing Earth from history had not erased its power, that all they had done was delay the inevitable. Humanity stood victorious, not as conquerors but as survivors whose existence itself was a weapon, and as the galaxy whispered in terror, one truth burned brighter than all others: the end of empires had returned, and the stars themselves would never be the same again.